It escalated on Friday afternoon, as you mentioned here in introduction. Israel preemptively struck Islamic Jihad targets in the Gaza Strip. That's their version of the situation, because they were anticipating a terrorist attack coming directly from Islamic Jihad across the border. So instead of waiting for it to happen, they simply launched airstrikes, and they took out a very senior commander of the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And Islamic Jihad retaliated immediately. And since then, more than 1,000 rockets have been fired at Israel. And Israel has, of course, continued bombarding in Gaza. They've killed 44 people. 15 of those have been kids, but there's still some dispute as to who actually killed the kids. Israel is saying that some of the rockets that were launched from Islamic Jihad at Israel, they failed to enter into Israel. In fact, they actually fell inside the strip, and some of them fell in densely populated areas where kids also live, of course. And they were the ones that actually killed many of those kids. That's Israel's version. Islamic Jihad and the people in Gaza in general believe that Israel is behind this. So a lot of dispute about the civilians here, but nevertheless, 44 killed, 15 children, no Israelis have been killed.
Indeed, and we believe, though, at least in those attacks on those commanders, that civilians did die in those attacks, including, it seems, 2 women and a child. I mean, we should make that clear that, civilians have died in this, and as you say, there may be dispute over the precise numbers, but in part because of Israeli actions.
Definitely. That's always the case in Gaza. And Israel is not hiding that there are casualties, that there are collateral damage, so to say. They are not hiding that, but they are trying to tell, especially the media, that they're going out of their way not to target civilians. Of course, the Palestinians are saying that's not true at all, and that's the reason why civilians keep getting killed. Nevertheless, it's quite interesting to note that this round of fighting between Islamic Jihad and Israel did not involve Hamas. Hamas is the ruler of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is the strongest part here. And Hamas is also the entity and the organization that was in a war with Israel a year ago. This time around, they kept out of it. They're still licking their wounds from last year's war. And it was not in their interest to start any escalation. So in fact, they've actually put pressure on Islamic Jihad to cease the fighting. So they have been in talks with Islamic Jihad. So has Egypt. And eventually, 48 hours later, Islamic Jihad more or less succumbed to the pressure and accepted a ceasefire without actually achieving anything militarily on their part.
And I think Egypt's been involved, haven't they, in mediating all of this. Is this ceasefire likely to hold, you reckon?
I don't think so. Let's be honest. Gaza conflict happen very often these days. In the past 3 years, we've had 3 rounds of big fighting, big clashes between Israel and either Hamas or Islamic Jihad. And we heard this morning, both from Hamas and Islamic Jihad, that this is not over. Just because there's a ceasefire doesn't mean that they're giving up their resistance, as they call it, against Israel. So we will have to just really wait and see when the next round of escalation is going to explode. But we do know that Islamic Jihad has really suffered a huge blow militarily here. 12 of their senior commanders have been killed, and it's a huge loss for an organization like Islamic Jihad.
And just very finally, we're expecting yet again another election, aren't we, in Israel towards the back half of this year. What impact do you think the demonstration, I suppose, in some ways, of that ability to wipe out those commanders will have? What impact might it have on that election?
It's a good question, and I think that people are extremely surprised about the caretaker Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, and how he handled this operation, as they call it, in Gaza. 48 hours with no Israelis killed, a big, huge blow to Islamic Jihad, and a ceasefire 48 hours later. He's actually really been applauded and commended by commentators and experts. Even the opposition leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, his fierce rival, met with him yesterday to discuss and to get a security briefing, and he said he gave his full backing to the government and to the IDF, the Israeli military. Very unusual. So this is definitely gonna be a win. This is a win for Yair Lapid. This will help him in the elections. Still, we're yet to see if the polls are actually going to reflect that. We will probably see that in the coming days.